To everything there is a season.
And a time for every purpose under heaven.
A time to be born and a time to die.
A time to plant and a time to uproot.
A time to kill and a time to heal.
A time to break down and a time to build.
A time to weep and a time to laugh.
A time to mourn and a time to dance.
A time to cast away stones and a time to gather stones together.
A time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing.
A time to search and a time to count as lost.
A time to keep and a time to discard.
A time to tear and a time to mend.
A time to be silent and a time to speak.
A time to love and a time to hate.
A time for war and a time for peace.
A time for the story to begin.
And a time for the journey to finish.
And a time to start a podcast.
And a time to let this podcast die. Join us as we discuss what it means to live a meaningful story one last time. How do you hold on to hope when time is running out? Ever since his debut in Amazing Fantasy number 15, the core of Spider-Man's mythos has been his attempt to balance his double life. Time and time again, Peter Parker juggles his commitments to loved ones like Aunt May and Gwen Stacy with his responsibility to protect the people of New York. He is both the everyman who wants stable relationships and the entrepreneur who has created something that helps others and gives him purpose. And despite his flaws and failures, we continue to cheer him on. Like its predecessor, The Amazing Spider-Man 2 is a film in search of its own identity. This is reflected in its depiction of a protagonist conflicted between who he is as Peter Parker and who he's meant to be as Spider-Man. The grounded realism of his first adventure becomes overshadowed by a bombastic, dubstep-infused rock opera of raging Russian caricatures, godlike metahumans, and emo goblins. Nestled within this overwhelming exterior is an intimate slice-of-life drama about a young man wrestling with where he's going in life and how to help as many people as he can along the way. Director Mark Webb weaves a compelling tale, spinning a web of dangling plot threads that ultimately crumbles under its own weight. This is a film ultimately about how to hold on to hope as time marches on, and perhaps it can help us navigate the tension within our own identities between who we are and who we can become. As Professor Jonathan Sanford shares in his chapter on Spider-Man and the importance of getting your story straight, one way to approach what it means to be self-reflective and to make sense of your life is to focus on how you tell your life story. By reflecting on Spider-Man's story, we can see some of the ways in which human beings in general are storytelling animals and come to understand how it is that beings of our sort can become good only by learning to get our own stories straight. I don't know where you are on your journey, what story you're living, and what story you're telling yourself. You might feel like Peter, caught in the tension between who you are and who you're meant to be. You might be ending one chapter of your life and getting a call to adventure into another. But my hope for you with this episode is that you will find a way to hold on to hope. Because if you're here and alive right now, then your story isn't over. Welcome to the Live a Meaningful Story podcast, where we explore connections between the movies we love and the stories we live. We are friends and colleagues with backgrounds in storytelling, filmmaking, teaching, and narrative therapy. Join us on our quest to unlock the power of storytelling for your life. I'm Derrick Hatch.
My name is Nick Natal.
Hello, everybody. I'm Joseph Wilson.
I'm Jason Lynn.
All right, guys, we've arrived the final episode of this podcast.
This is the end.
And you know something? We were just talking about this. It's not a sad
done.
ending.
It's finished.
It's not a sad ending. It's not a bitter ending. This is something that is beautiful because it's a culmination.
This is like the only good ending I've had.
Oh.
But hashtag that
That's
one, yeah.
wild.
I mean, have you guys had good endings to things?
Like some things
Yes.
I have.
Well, good for you.
I was like,
I think endings are beautiful, right? Because we live in a time when we want to perpetually keep things going. We have movie franchises that have no end in sight. And an ending is where we really reveal the meaning of something. We get to see the fullness of what the story has been telling all along.
Yeah.
That's what we've done with Jason's episode with the Iron Giant, Joe's episode with the Book of Eli, and Nick's episode with Mad Max 2. And for my final podcast pick, it's not going to come as a surprise to people who know me pretty well that I'm choosing a Spider-Man film. A lot of people are probably thinking, how did it take so long? And I think that's part of the journey here because I had a completely different film picked. And it was a really like universally well-regarded film, an amazing film. I think also one of the greatest films of all time.
Yeah, we don't want none of that. We don't want none of that. We want personal.
Yes,
you picked the
we do
metaphor.
want personal. And Nick asked me a question, point blank, after this texting exchange that went on until 1 a.m.
That only a good friendship could withstand.
That only a good friend, because it got hot.
Really?
It got hot.
I had to call Jason.
You did?
I was like, I was like, things are not good right now.
That's hilarious.
I was at work chilling, like, oh yeah, tell me what's going on.
No, things are good.
That's
because this is good. And he asked the question, who is the protagonist who you most fully see yourself in? And the immediate answer was Peter Parker in the Amazing Spider-Man films.
Andrew Garfield's Peter
Andrew
Parker.
Garfield's Peter Parker in those films. Yes. Part of my podcast journey has been establishing myself in this venture of all things narrative. And, you start a podcast because you want to establish yourself as like a storytelling expert. Because that's what I do. I'm a storytelling coach. And I'm like, I'm going to use this podcast to help establish my credibility that I know what I'm talking about and talking about, storytelling. So I've picked movies that genuinely meet a criteria of being like really well-regarded, well-crafted stories, and then also being ones that I really, really love, appreciate, and connect with on some level.
Yeah.
But all that got thrown out the window with Schlockfest because Schlockfest, I went so intimate and so deeply personal on this. And I was like, I'm picking a 2.9 or a 2.8 rated film on Letterboxd. I don't care because we watched it together and I felt seen.
Yeah.
And that's what I picked. And I think I needed to continue that.
Joe's commitment and authenticity help get you there.
100%. And I'm going to talk about that. Yes. Okay. And I'm going to talk about that when we get to my
commitment
stats.
to bad movies. help free Derrick.
I'm laughing. I'm like, oh wait. Like,
funny.
Okay.
That was so back.
Yeah, there we go. That's the other turn, isn't it? I knew it wasn't. I knew it wasn't really good.
And I did not want to pick this movie. Because number one...
You don't want to pick Spider-Man?
No, this particular Spider-Man movie. I did not want to pick this particular movie because it is divisive. It literally has a 50% on Rotten Tomatoes. That's the most split down the middle you can get.
Yeah, it sucks.
I love this movie. This is my favorite.
See, you're hearing it right here. It sucks. It's good.
No.
You're hearing it right here.
The theatrical cut of this movie sucks.
No, I would still say the theatrical cut is still one of my favorite Spider-Man movies.
Continue.
As he takes a shot. And we did an episode, one of our first episodes was on Spider-Man, why we love Spider-Man. And I walked away from that episode going, I will never be able to convince Nick that there is any value in this movie and in Andrew Garfield's interpretation of the character.
I was crazy.
Wrong. Your turn.
Well, I haven't fully, I don't think this is, I haven't rated it, so I don't know.
So I was debating whether we were going to focus more on the first Amazing Spider-Man or the second one. But the last rewatch, I remember a comment that you made, Nick, that you kind of felt like visually the first movie is like super bland. And I actually agree with you. It's a more competently made movie than the second one, but it's not as bold.
Mm-hmm.
Like it doesn't take as big of swings. And I almost admire like the bigger swings in the second one. The first one is kind of like this steady tone, muted color palette. It's shot on digital, retreads a lot of the ground of the Raimi films. But the second one is like a nice contrast. They chose to shoot it. They went back to shooting it on film for the second one. It's the last Spider-Man movie that was shot on film.
Mm-hmm.
It's the only one that's shot completely on location in New York City, which is awesome because when Tori and I went to New York last year, there's like a website. I don't know if you've ever seen this. There's a website for like New York City filming locations, and you could type in any movie and it'll tell you exactly the address of where to go. So we went there for The Godfather, and we found like The Amazing Spider-Man 2 has like over a dozen things on that website. So we went and found as many as we could while we were walking around, stood there, took pictures. And there's something really interesting that I was thinking about with this movie. This is a polarizing movie. And, you know, in narrative therapy, there's these two landscapes of thinking about narratives, whether it's a story of your life or a story in a film. So there's the landscape of action and the landscape of identity or consciousness. It goes by a couple names. This is from Jerome Bruner. So landscape of action is basically like left hemisphere brain thinking, right? Where we're looking at the story itself and we're looking at, okay, does the plot make sense, right?
Mm-hmm.
What's the character arc? What are the themes that are present? It's a more objective, like we're looking at things as they are, trying to understand, make sense of it, right? That very logical side of our brain. The landscape of identity is right hemisphere. It's feelings, emotions, how we're reacting to things. But the most important thing for this conversation is meaning. How are we connecting to something and what is the meaning we're drawing from it, right? And that's all that right brain, side, that kind of thinking there. So often what I found is that when we have negative feelings towards a movie, whether it's me with The Last Jedi and After Sun, or whether it's Jason in Tree of Life, right? Whatever it is.
Most meaningful movie that you have to your heart, hate it.
Yeah.
or whether
slow.
or whether it's Nick and Dune.
Yeah, no, I don't like Dune.
Yeah, so what my theory is based on what this conversation, narrative therapy here in neuroscience, is that when we have those moments, it's because our landscape of action and our landscape of identity, our right and left hemispheres aren't connected. And when there's a disconnect happening as we're watching a narrative, we're looking at it and the landscape of action doesn't make sense. The meaning, our emotions might be like more reserved. Our sense of meaning might get drowned out, right? And this is what I think is happening with this movie. The theatrical cut of The Amazing Spider-Man 2 is a hot mess of a movie.
Yup.
It is a hot mess.
It is a hot mess.
Straight up.
But don't you know, I'm Electro.
But despite all the knowledge I have of storytelling, my landscape of action side of my brain did not care, which is very unusual because this might be the only movie
it is weird
that I think of. And I had to ask with my conversation with Nick, why? Why is my landscape of identity so lit up in this movie to where I'm willing to forgive? And as I'll talk about later, recut a version of the movie to have a more logical landscape of action so that other people can try to see what I see in this movie. But my landscape of identity and meaning is so high in this movie that I made it the final pick for this podcast. So first reactions, you loved it. You didn't love it.
I watched it in theater.
Where were you, Jason, when you first saw this movie?
Where were you in The Amazing Spider-Man 2?
Yeah, what was your kind of first reaction?
Oh, a movie.
That is good. That is
perfect.
You keep your head.
So
that is good.
Neutral. Okay, perfect.
That's just okay.
All right, so I'm gonna get into the letterbox, and then we're gonna unpack this, and we will do the analysis of my journey and the stats and all that at the end. So here we go.
Goodbye, Letterboxd.
No more secrets. For Peter Parker, life is busy. Between taking out the bad guys as Spider-Man and spending time with the person he loves, Gwen Stacy, high school graduation cannot come quickly enough. Peter has not forgotten about the promise he made to Gwen's father to protect her by staying away, but that is a promise he cannot keep. Things will change for Peter when a new villain, Electro, emerges. An old friend, Harry Osborn, returns, and Peter uncovers new clues about his past. So let me give the context for my version. And instead of giving... So my nickname is Context because I give context for the movies themselves. I'm not going to do that this time. I'm going to give the context for my journey with the movie before getting to this table. I grew up really liking the Raimi films, but I didn't love them. But I really like them, and I genuinely think the first two ones are the best live-action ones, objectively speaking. Mm-hmm. So even though they said they were going to reboot this movie, it was weird, but I was open to it. And I got a special love for the Raimi films because emo Spider-Man, emo Peter in number 3, and Spider-Man 2 that credits ends with one of the most emo like anthem songs of all time,
That's funny.
which is Vindicated by Dashboard Confessional, which I played at my birthday party that you guys came to, which we played that song.
Oh, that whole
So-
thing was sick.
The first trailer for this film was marketed as The Untold Story. And that grabbed me because guess what my first band name was?
Untold.
Story.
The Untold Story, yes. And I'm like, ooh, I already feel kind of seen with this. So then, as someone who felt misunderstood and felt like I have this journey of an untold story, and it was when I began telling that story to people that I actually found healing. So I went to a midnight screening of the first Amazing Spider-Man film, and I was like, not only is this the Peter Parker I feel like I've read in comics all my life, this feels like parts of me are being seen on the screen. I felt very, very well connected with it. That summer that it came out was a really, really hard summer because we were at the culmination. My dad had left my family a couple years prior, and through a lot of things that happened that summer, my dad and my mom were reconciling. And so there was a lot of emotion coming with that. And the first Amazing Spider-Man is about a father leaving, right?
Yeah.
And trying to make sense of that. Tori also did not come home that summer. We were long distance dating, and she said, if I stay this summer and take classes, I can graduate a year early. And I said, do it. But it was a really hard summer because I only saw Tori about 3 times a year. And it was winter break, spring break, and one other time, which was summer. And we didn't have that. I decided to make a trip out to at the end of summer when she finished her summer school. And I went out there to go visit her. And I said, Tori, we're going to go see this movie. We had gotten in a lot of fights that summer, even before that summer. It was probably one of the worst places of our relationship. I was wondering if we were even going to make it. But that trip coming out here was healing because I felt like that really helped a lot of things. She felt seen, I felt seen, and we go and watch this movie and we both feel seen together. A lot of stuff with me and Peter, but my wife also has a lot of similarities to Emma Stone's Gwen Stacy. And we walked out of the movie having the best time ever. We felt so seen as a couple. It was awesome.
Yeah, Emma Stone's Gwen Stacy is the best live screen adaptation of Peter Parker's relationship.
I mean, in this movie, there is such a genuine warmth to Peter and Gwen and their chemistry. It just feels believable. It's like one of the best romances I've ever seen, maybe in a movie, period. So then, a year later, Tori does come back for the summer in 2013, and I take her to Comic-Con. And I was able to score us VIP tickets to an Entertainment Weekly event for The Amazing Spider-Man 2.
Okay.
Only 50 people, I think, got in. It was an amazing event.
Amazing?
Yes. It was a restaurant downtown, and they had free food for us. So it was all you can eat in downtown San Diego.
Yeah, I like that too.
And we all got free merch. We got free shirts, free swag, all that good stuff. I have the bag. I cosplayed as Peter Parker. Tori cosplayed as Gwen, and my brother cosplayed as Harry Osborn. But the big surprise was that Andrew Garfield, Jamie Foxx, and director Mark Webb came in the room.
That's sick.
And they
That's
were
real
all
sick.
there, and we got to, in a small crowd of 50 people, got to be with them.
That's cool.
And that took my personal
really
connection
cool.
to this even higher. Hearing the passion that they shared for the film, I'm like, this is going to be like the best movie ever. Like, I was so hyped up after that conversation as they were teasing what the themes and the story was about. And I was so ready. And I followed the production of the film really closely, and reports started to come in that this movie was going to be a train wreck.
I remember
From
hearing
test
that.
screenings,
Yep.
a lot of things were starting to happen. And so I go opening night, and I witness on the screen a compromised vision of everything I told I was going to get.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew it. But there was still something emotionally and intimately powerful in this film that I knew there was something there. This is the hardest I've ever cried in a movie theater.
Really?
The hardest I've ever cried watching, spoiler alert, watching Gwen snap.
Yeah.
That snap was the hardest I've ever cried because I had a feeling it was coming. I didn't know for sure if it was coming, and it came, and it hurt.
They killed her.
Yes, which I would say, I'm going to argue it's the boldest move ever made in a comic book movie, is to kill your co-lead. and not even in the best way possible.
Yeah.
But anyways, so I love
That
the
was
film
rough.
despite its imperfections. When it came out on Blu-ray and DVD, something happened. There were over 30 minutes of deleted scenes. And I said, what the hell? Why weren't these in the movie? There were about 30 minutes I would cut from this movie and put most of these scenes back in. And that's when I first got the idea to make a fan edit.
The Derrick cut.
I laid it out how I would do it, but I didn't do it until 2020. I was working on my fan edit during my lunch breaks. And I was doing it in 2021 as well. I was kind of piecing it together. I invited Joe to come over to watch a version of the fan edit that I did. And then immediately afterwards, I'm like, it's not complete yet. I need to do it. And so I invited you guys over a couple weeks ago and I showed you the fan edit. I'm very happy with it. I'm not changing it from this point.
Wait.
But
yes. The candles.
Yes, the candles. It's
just
my
put
birthday.
Just put it in that spot.
Oh my God.
Let's just light my candles.
Let's just see what it sounds like.
I took
Let's
out
just play with it.
all the things that detracted from the tone and the gravitas
It was
of
most
the movie.
electro stuff.
Which is
It
would be
was his
sick
birthday.
If it's
It was his
overheard while they're on the
birthday,
bridge.
yeah.
All
It
right.
makes sense. He's
I
finally
will
cool.
find a
He's
way
gonna
to
try
put
to
it-
say something cool.
I will find a way to put it back in.
Thank you.
So, but all that to say, this is where
That's
I'm
all
going
I
with this.
need.
All that to say, there's a strange amount of connection, possessiveness, even because Andrew Garfield's Peter Parker is the lover archetype and he has a possessiveness over Gwen. I have the lover archetype possessiveness over this film. And especially of this fan edit that I made, because I think it's a good movie. I think it's an awesome, amazing movie.
Yeah.
You played a clip from the first Spider-Man podcast we had, and I was talking a lot about the visual language of the film.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I emphasized that so much because the story was so confusing
Mm-hmm.
because it's so poorly edited and constructed that's all I had to rely on.
Mhm.
And so with your version, it's much more concise and clear, and I was able to really connect with the characters more.
And that was my goal. So,
So
I'm glad.
that was true, and I do really like these characters a lot. So just that difference alone is what stuck out this time.
Yeah, I would say, like Nick said, it's concise. I saw the movie when it first came out as well, and I loved all the
stuff I cut out.
All the
All the
schlock.
schlock I cut out.
love all the schlock. I love Electro's line, "You see me." Say, "Yes, I see you." I love the dubstep,
The dubstep,
stuff.
itsy bitsy.
I love all of that
ridiculous.
stuff.
That was ridiculous.
Yeah, but it's a comic book movie. It's supposed to be ridiculous in some way. But with the original, it was just more like
Too
it
much
leaned.
reality.
Yeah,
Too much reality.
it wanted it. You could tell the studio just wanted a fun movie. But with yours,
But Mark Webb wanted an intimate, like personal story about a young man who's navigating this relation. And I'm going to get into that when I get into my analysis. But yeah,
I think you brought that in really well.
there really are two competing, like overarching, like meta narratives of what this film is. And my goal was to push it in one direction because the theatrical cut is pushed in another one.
Yes.
And things get drowned out.
Yeah.
I could not enter into this movie at all. I don't know if this is a hot take, but I felt like I was watching a director's cut with commentary. It felt like there was so much going on outside the movie that I could not just take it. But from what I could see and what I did like, I liked how things were like logically connected. Okay, I can see him talking about the suit. I can see how like it made sense. The movie made more sense and I enjoyed it.
Well, just to kind of piggyback off on that, the original movie doesn't make sense at all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like those scenes were really helpful.
Yeah, and I liked those.
Yeah, I watched the original cut before this one, and I found it helpful to kind of see how everything was being placed together.
Yeah.
But I could see how you got lost in that. Sure.
Like I was being like shown two
for
movies
sure.
at once, inside and outside.
It is weird because it feels like I made a movie.
Yeah.
And there is a part of me that feels like I have to justify that I did this. And I think that's a huge part why I was giving commentaries because I feel like Joe and I connect over this movie. I feel like I had to get you and you to see something, right? But there is this huge amount of insecurity I have that is coming out with everything that Nick texted. And it is because this movie and Emo the Musical are bringing out things. They are bringing out very personal things
Yeah.
that I feel like have been shut down by so many people.
Mm.
And so that's probably why I was talking a lot, is because I feel like I need to justify. And I was frazzled from the whole Marco's Pizza incident, too.
Yo,
That's
my
a huge
gosh.
part of it as well.
Pizza time.
Frazzle dazzle.
Yes. So let's get into kind of the analysis here, like of the movie itself for a little bit. So the first film is really about how does Peter Parker be Spider-Man, right?
Mhm.
This is the opposite. This is how does Spider-Man learn to be Peter Parker? So I really want to talk about these 4 main characters in the story. And it's cool because they actually each have their own little motif from Hans Zimmer's score. So Spider-Man, he's got these, bombastic horns. Gwen's got these very gorgeous, pretty string arrangement. Electro, Max has a clarinet to like solidify like kind of like his solitude. And then when he turns into Electro, it turns into that electronic dubstep. Harry Goblin's got that cool synth effect. And then the time motif in general is like an electric guitar that'll come into everyone. It'll basically comes into everyone's themes at different times. So in my version, there's the opening scene is Peter falling, right?
Yeah.
And you see the whole chase with Alexei Sitsevich, who becomes the Rhino later.
Highway 67.
Yeah, I cut the airplane. It's
Airplane's
useless.
opening scene.
It's
Yeah, of
useless.
the-
That's
Useless.
Paul Giamatti is the
Yeah.
Rhino.
Paul
I can't-
Giamatti, our
I can't wrap my
holdovers,
head over
holdovers
that.
teacher.
Can't
Yep.
wrap my mind around it.
But he's racing towards his high school graduation. So right off the bat in the opening scene, Peter Parker and Spider-Man are at war with each other.
Yeah.
That to me is like what this movie is your identities are clashing. And-
Literally the opening scene, I'm already out from the original Spider-Man.
Yeah.
It looks
It's a
terrible.
mess.
It-
I
it
agree.
is.
It's shot terribly.
It's funny because a lot of kids were like in the movie theaters when it was coming out. They're like, as it was going on, like, where's Spider-Man? I
Yes.
just want to see Spider-Man.
Yep,
It's like,
uh-huh.
yeah.
No, you need to start with that right away. I mean, it's so
Yeah.
perfect. The logo fading in, him falling.
Mhm.
It's so good. It's such a great opening action scene.
Best suit as well. This
Oh
is
yeah,
the
this
best
is the
Spider-Man
suit that I
I've seen.
have. I paid a lot of money to get a film replica cosplay, and I have Gwen, the jacket she wears. No,
Mhm.
not that one,
Oh,
but the jacket, the greenish jacket that she wears in the third act of the movie. I bought that for Tori as well.
jacket.
She wears a green one
Yeah,
in the third act.
in
Yeah.
the third act.
Interesting.
It's the same outfit that she wears in the comics when she
Mhm.
dies too.
Green is always danger.
Yes,
the
it is.
Green
Yes,
Goblin.
green is
Green Knight.
always danger
Yeah.
in Spider-Man's
Green Knight,
world.
yep.
Yeah.
She'll wear that jacket just for fun. And the crazy thing is that in my first year as an entrepreneur, I would go dressed up as Spider-Man and I would volunteer to go visit kids who were, in physical therapy or who were in the hospital. And I was doing it dressed as this version of the character, trying to balance out being a new entrepreneur with volunteering and all these others. So it's just so ironic. He saves the day as Spider-Man. He's successful there, but he misses Gwen's speech,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
He's successful in this area of his life, but another area of his life fails
Yeah.
in a sense. And then he tries to get up for that public display of affection, but it's really possessiveness. Like, it's really like, I want to show that I, the outcast, have now arrived. I, the emo outcast from the first
By
movie
making out
who
with
was
Gwen, right?
bullied,
Yeah.
I now have this.
Mm-hmm.
Now, here's the crazy part. I gave the speech at my high school graduation.
Then Tori came up
Like
to you and made out
Gwen.
with
No, but Tori was there though. We weren't dating yet
you.
though.
Oh.
But my high school graduation speech, I still stand by it. I think it's a good speech. But part of that speech was inside me trying to prove that outcast from freshman year
Yeah.
who was bullied, look where I am now. I am standing giving the commencement speech
And
at
making
our
sure all-
graduation.
Yeah.
To me, that's really obvious what I'm seeing there. And it's a weird clashing, right? It's a clashing of those two worlds there. What is happening, though, is that you have Peter Parker's personal life and his relationships. And you've got Spider-Man, which really is his entrepreneurial endeavor.
Mm.
Think about it, right? To be an entrepreneur means you create something out of nothing and you bring it into
It's
the
his own
world.
little personal business.
It is. Well, I mean, think about it. Like, it's his brand.
Yeah.
He remember at the end of the first film, he sees the logo spray painted and he's excited, right?
Yeah.
Like his brand's getting out there. And in a moment, I'll talk about how people are wrestling with that. Spider-Man is his ministry and his entrepreneurship put together, right? And as someone who is a part of both,
Yeah.
it speaks to me. That's the lens that I see Spider-Man with there. it's essentially like his time in ministry and his time as an entrepreneur is helping him to become more confident and healed in his personal relationships, right? At least it should be. And that's my whole high school journey right there. You know,
Really?
my high school journey started with Emo the Musical, and it ends with Peter Parker confident at the graduation, right? And Gwen giving the speech. That's where it ends there. And you start to see these cool scenes in the movie, too, where you see Spider-Man bleeding into Peter Parker's life a little bit, like the scene where he tries to help Gwen escape from the security guards and trips them up. So you see there's a bleeding of identities that's starting to happen there. All the while, Peter Parker's always had a sense of compassion to him, right? In the opening of The Amazing Spider-Man, the kid gets bullied and he stands up for him, right? So that compassion is leaking out into Spider-Man. If you notice that in every single confrontation with an antagonist, Spider-Man never goes to attack them. He always sits and tries to understand. He tries to talk to them. Whether it's knocking on the window and talking to Alexi and introducing himself, which is what I did literally with Marco's Pizza. And I walked in yesterday and demanded my refund that they still haven't given me. I said, "Hi, my name's Derrick." Okay, we need to, and then I throw down, right?
Spider-Man.
So, and then with Electro in Times Square, Harry trying to talk him down towards the end of the movie. He's always trying to use words to get out of conflict, which obviously I relate to that there. But I would argue that Electro, Goblin, Rhino, those are not the main antagonists of the movie. The main antagonist of this movie is time. It's time. It is a race against time. It stretches him. And that is, oddly enough, reflected in the messy structure of the movie. So you've got Peter trying to balance out being Spider-Man with his relationship with Gwen, with his support for his best friend Harry, with his devotion to his Aunt May, with the search for the truth about his absent father. None of these things on the surface go together. But as the movie slowly converges, you start to see the tangled web that his life is in. And you start to see that time is against him on all sides. And his life has become so messy. It is full of subplots. It is going to reach a boiling point where it's going to pop off and explode. That is exactly how I felt right before I started All Things Narrative. I had church over here. I had work over here. I had this podcast over here. I had family over here. I was spread way too thin. And my plot threads were not converged. And I felt like my life was going to pop off. So this is oddly like a slice of life movie in a weird way. There is no conventional story or story structure in this movie. This is a mess. But even in my fan edit, it's still a messy movie. It's still like, what's the story of The Amazing Spider-Man 2? Peter trying to balance out all those things. That is the story, right? So even when I tried to clean it up, I started to realize I think this is the point. I think it's the point because the central theme of the movie, I think, is time. And it's how time, that's the common thread in all the stories here. That's the common thread is that the race against time is constraining Peter and it's not giving Peter space to deal with his emotions. If you notice in this movie, there's no room for us as the audience to breathe. And there's no room for Peter to breathe as well. Shoot, he can't even sit still in this movie. When the first time in this movie, I mean, Hans Zimmer's score is amazing and I love it, but it's almost nonstop in the movie. The first time the score stops is when Peter and Harry are reconnecting and they're skipping rocks together. And Peter cannot just sit and be with his friend. He picks up the rocks. He's throwing things. He's not even directly looking at him the whole time. He's sometimes
that's the question.
His mind is so not in the conversation. It's so not there, and you can tell that he has a moment to breathe and he's not taking it. The second time, there's no music. He's on the bed after he had just beaten Electro, after he had just learned that Gwen's going to Oxford. And what does he do in that second moment of silence?
He throws his case, his dad's case, right? Briefcase?
Yes, in a second. But he goes to the table and he picks up
Oh, headphones.
He puts
to listen.
he puts noise in his ears. He puts music in his ears.
There's always something.
There's always
no rest.
something. And then when he's trying to rest with the music, he gets up, closes the closet with the briefcase, sits there, and he can't sit still.
Yeah.
This is a character who cannot sit still. This is a character who cannot sit in silence. This is a character who struggles with solitude, and this character is me. This is me right here.
Yeah.
I have to learn to stop and slow down.
Yeah. That's good.
And so I relate to this so much. And again, it's reflected in this messy structure here. Whenever he does have time to rest, someone always needs him. His Aunt May knocks on the door when he had a long day of being Spider-Man. You have all these voices. Like, the montage is so great with that, where he gets in a fight with Gwen and then he throws himself into being Spider. It's one of my favorite cuts is when he walks away from Gwen slowly and downcast, and then his head is up running as Spider-Man. He doesn't deal with those emotions. He works.
Yeah.
He instead chooses work over family. And that, again, that was part of my story too. Okay. I'm just going to throw myself into ministry.
Yeah.
I'm just going to throw myself into all things narrative. And the fight I have with my wife, or the issue with the kids right now, I'm walking away downcast. But I'm going to go feel like a hero today. I'm going to go into this, jump into this. And again, it's busy. The montage is busy, right? He never stops. And as the montage is going, there's all these competing voices trying to say who he is. Who is Spider-Man? He's a menace. He's this. He's that. He helps the boy. He helps the boy Jorge, right? Beautiful scene of him helping that boy, like that touching moment of connection there. Yeah. And I don't think it's just the external voices. I think it's meant to be internal. I think these are the voices he's taking in, and he's trying to push ahead and try to do what he knows he's supposed to do, even though people are doubting him, second guessing him. It's so personal to me. It's so deeply personal. He feels this weight. Oh, another moment where he's sleeping and Harry Osborn calls him up and asks him to come to Oscorp when he's trying to rest. Everybody's trying to tell him who he is.
Yeah.
Everybody's competing for his attention, and he doesn't know how to stop.
Yeah.
He's running out of time. Everyone's run out of time. Everyone's fighting for agency, and he's trying to push forward to have that agency. So
no, I think that makes sense, and how you even really saw that connection when you first were watching the movie, but how you were just able to connect these things to your story and realizing that time is a big thing for you, because I remember
it's a big theme in my life.
Yeah, I remember you discussing like your biggest fear is losing memories.
Yes.
That's pretty much losing time and losing what you have
losing
done.
Things to the passage of time.
Yes.
100%.
Yes.
100%.
It's really interesting that is your thing, because I think of me and I'm like, bro, I can't wait till the Lord come back. But and stuff like that. But it's just like you is like every single moment matters. And like I could just sit and be calm. I feel like I'm too I said this to Jason. I feel like I'm out too much, or I do too much, and I just want to relax. But you is just like something needs to be done in every instance, and I think it's a good thing, and in other ways it can be a bad thing, So
for me to go on this retreat with you guys in a couple weeks and not work is gonna be huge,
and that's crazy to me, because I'm like, let's just chill. It's just chill time. I'm not trying to think of anything.
Yep, I'm with you there.
No responsibilities.
It's interesting though, Derrick. Don't you find like energy and longing in things in the past, in nostalgia?
I do.
Isn't that like part of the personality?
Absolutely.
So then that conflicts with the fear of losing things when you're finding energy in the things lost already.
No,
does that make sense?
Yes, it does make sense. But I think
holding on to it, so it's not.
But I think that's what
lost,
nostalgia is. I think nostalgia is holding on to the past so you don't lose it.
Okay.
So I think that all plays a role in it.
This is honestly something that I really relate to, in terms of it just feels like everything is pulling me in different directions. And it feels like I have all these different lives, all these different things I'm trying to do, all my friends that I've accumulated for the past like near 30 years here. It's just everything is pulling me in different directions, and I have no time. Time eludes me.
Yeah.
It's spinning past.
Well, and as that's happening, Jason, like for all of us here, when we're feeling stretched by time, the thing is we have things that are not dealt with, right? We have hurts, things that from the past, talking about the past, Nick, we have things from the past that are hurting us. Every single character in this movie, Nick's kind of jokingly, but maybe were you serious when you said this? Like Emo the Musical and The Amazing Spider-Man 2 are the same movie?
Yes.
They very much are in a lot of ways. These are characters who are very emo. They are struggling with abandonment.
Yeah.
Max Dillon feels abandoned by his coworkers. He feels seen as a human being by
everybody.
By both Gwen. Gwen humanizes him in the elevator and Spider-Man, right?
Yeah.
Harry Osborn recounts feeling abandoned by his father, and then his father dies. Gwen is feeling on and off abandoned by Peter, who can't be decisive. Peter feels abandoned by his parents. Everybody has some hurt that they're really, really struggling with. And in the midst of that, there's time is running out for them in different ways. And the only thing that you can hold on to when you're in that state is hope. So Peter tells Harry, and Harry hasn't revealed yet that he's dying, but when they're on the beach, Peter says that I like to think that Spider-Man gives people hope. And Harry says, for what? And he says that eventually everything's going to be all right. Which you, when we watched the movie, yes, but you did turn to me and you said, that's you. Like that's something I would say. And then Harry's reply to that is, I wish I had time for eventually.
Dang.
I wish I had time. But I think this dialogue exchange is really important. It really is kind of the heartbeat of the film here. Because Peter as Spider-Man is trying to embody hope for people. And that's why he throws himself into it, because it's what gives him meaning in life. He wants to become the symbol of hope. The problem is that he is a symbol of hope for a faceless crowd. And the people in his life closest to him, he fails. And this is why I think this is one of the boldest superhero comic book movies ever made. This is a movie where the protagonist superhero character fails almost everyone except the crowds. And it hurts.
Yeah, that's so heavy.
Yeah.
So you look at Max, and he saves Max at the beginning of the movie, and he's in such a hurry that he doesn't think about the words he's using. And I think he's genuine in what he's saying, but his words have consequences.
Yeah, he's still playing a game.
Yeah. And with someone's emotions and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. And listen, I've done that to people. I've done that so many times. So many times. It's hurt. I know I've hurt people with my words, and maybe even the false hope that I've given them with my words. But he's in a hurry, right? That's why he doesn't think through his words.
Yeah.
He's trying to make a difference, but he's too much in a hurry. He doesn't know how to slow down.
It's missions over people at the moment.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so when Max falls into the tank and becomes, Electro, he realizes he has hope in that moment that maybe he can be something more than just Max. But in Times Square, he realizes that hope is misplaced. I love that Times Square scene, by the way. It's very well paced of how it builds tension. Yeah, because essentially he tries to build that relationship, and he's better than he is in the beginning of the movie. He's improved, right? I think he's learning how to handle that. But Max is essentially believes Spider-Man set him up. And doesn't trust him. And instead of Spider-Man trying to earn his trust, he just resorts to pushing the problem away. Literally pushing the problem away with a fire hose.
Yeah.
And again, he saves people.
Yeah.
That beautiful moment where the spider sense on the stairs of New York, in the Times Square, incredible.
And then it's a din, 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 din,
yeah,
din.
an amazing score there, right?
So
And
jazz. I like that.
Yeah, so he is successful, but he also fails. And that's every scene in this movie. He's successful in doing in a broad macro level, but he fails in the micro. He fails to connect and to actually help the named people that we're latching on to in this movie. He cannot save Max from becoming another identity, Electro. And that is
Good.
reflected in the same thing in the climax in the power plant, right?
Yeah.
Same thing. His resort is not to depower Max or to try to help him.
Just kill him.
It's to blow him up,
Yeah.
essentially, right? To blow it up, get the problem out of the way so we can go to England.
Mm-hmm.
It hurts because he is successful. He saves lives, but he's also ruining someone else's.
Yeah, and then he loses the most important life that matters to him.
Yeah, which we'll get to in a minute too. But the whole second act of the movie between those two fights with Electro, there's only one scene of Spider-Man in that whole time, and that's when he has to tell Harry that he's not going to give him his blood. And I love that because the movie is forcing Peter to deal with Peter. He does not have outsourced to Spider-Man. And again, the only time he's Spider-Man in the second act of this movie, it's another failure. He's alienated from Harry there. It's really interesting because I really do think that the two villains here, so Electro is who Peter would have become had he continued to have been bullied and not worked through the things he did in the first film, and Harry becoming the Goblin. Goblin is who Peter would have become without the love of Uncle Ben and Aunt May. And that's why, like, Peter getting that message from his father at Roosevelt is so important because his dad left him, but he wants to know that his dad still loved him. That sense of abandonment. And I got to tell you, like, when my dad left, you remember the story I shared in Return of the Jedi with the card that I found?
Yeah.
That was my Roosevelt moment. That was that moment. And there were a couple moments as well. Like, my dad wrote me something. I don't think I talked about it on that episode, but I remember like my dad writing me something and like he's physically like wrote like I love you in there, and that really like meant a lot to me because he wasn't always very vocal about that. And that was kind of like my Roosevelt, because I questioned that when he had left so much. I questioned, does he actually love us? Does he actually care about us? And even though it was for completely different reasons than Peter's dad, I feel like part of why my dad left was because he loved us and he did not like the person that he had become and thought that he was hurting us. So,
yeah, I was watching the film and I texted you and I said, have you sat down and talked to your dad about this movie? Because I remember these stories.
Yeah. So it's heavy. So Harry asks Peter for Spider-Man's blood, and he's willing to give it a try to see what happens. And Harry says, I put together what you said at the river, that he gives people hope. He's willing to take a chance on this and see where it goes. And then this is where it hurts when he appears as Spider-Man and he says, no, he's not going to do it because it's too dangerous, doesn't know what the risks are going to be. And Harry says, I thought you were supposed to save people. And then Peter says, as Spider-Man, we just need a little more time. And Harry retorts back, I don't have time. So this is that conversation on the beach that I mentioned earlier. That conversation at the beach, but now it's the next step of it. Peter's saying, I like to think Spider-Man gives people hope. And he's saying, no, that's not true. And Harry was the one before who said, I wish I had time. And now Peter's saying, we need a little more time. And Harry's like, no, I do not have that time. He's firm in it. And he's sitting there drinking booze and he's not thinking straight. And it's sad because when he becomes the Goblin, he's kind of taking that villain arc like his dad, where it's all about self-preservation. But the Goblin suit, like that identity, becomes the only thing that he believes will save him. And Peter, it's an identity game. When Harry appears, he says, this isn't you, Harry. Stop this right now. What is Harry's next line?
This is what you've made me.
No. His next line is Harry is dead. It's tragic. And so he's trying to confront this. And there's this amazing moment where after the stuff with Harry doesn't go through, after all the stuff with finding out the truth about his parents is a mess, right?
Yeah.
He goes to Gwen and he says probably one of the most meta statements of the whole movie in Oxford, where he says, the only thing I keep coming back to
is you,
is us. Yeah, is you. And that is a statement because I think for this movie, that is what we come back to. That is what we're rooting for, is we're rooting for Peter and Gwen's relationship to make it work. That's the plot thread we're invested in, and that's what we care about. And all this other stuff gets in the way of that happening. And Peter acknowledges that in the script, that everything else in the story is getting in the way of their love, which I think is amazing.
Yeah.
For how messy this movie is, there is something it knows about what it's doing with the mess. When Spider-Man tells Harry that basically his hope misplaced, that he's not going to give him the blood, Harry reacts impulsively.
You're a fraud, Spider-Man.
You're a fraud, Spider-Man. And he goes and injects himself with the spider venom, right? So
that works out.
And Harry and Electro team up because they both are united by a failure of someone. Max Dillon and Electro represents Spider-Man's failure to save Max from his own securities. And the Green Goblin reflects Peter Parker's failure to save Harry from his own impulses.
That's good.
So that's what brings them together, is that Peter Parker and Spider-Man, both identities fail, and that's what creates the antagonists in his story. And then they also, both Max and Harry, they both don't want to be Electro and Goblin.
Yeah.
I would argue they both want to be Spider-Man.
Mm-hmm.
Electro wants to be seen like Spider-Man. Harry literally, like, physically wants
his blood.
His blood, right?
Sure.
But here's why. You guys had asked while we were watching it, why does the blood thing not bother you? The fact that it's Richard Parker, the DNA with the spiders. Because for this story, this works. Because it's trying to prove that to be Spider-Man is not what's in your blood. It's not what's in your DNA. It's your character. It's who you are. Electro and Max both are Spider-Man in a sense. Harry literally has the same injection that Peter got from the spider bite in him, but it doesn't make him heroic.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Electro has the same amount of power, but it doesn't. They cannot get over their hurt and their trauma. They are stuck in it.
Yeah.
And that is why being Spider-Man is not in your blood. It's not in the powers. It's in who you are as a person. And the thing that hurts is that Spider-Man, Peter Parker are trying to bring that. They're trying to bring that out for Max and Harry, but he's not actually healing. He's not doing the deeper inner healing with them. And that's why they can never be Spider-Man. But I think this is the secret sauce of this movie. Peter and Spider-Man are not the heroes of this movie. I think Gwen is the hero. Gwen has no powers whatsoever. She's the only one out of our four main characters who has no powers.
Yeah.
Gwen always does the right thing. She has a dream to go to Oxford. She has agency. She has her own goals. And she says, you know what? I know the grid. I've seen the specs. I can be there.
No one
I can
tells me
help.
what to do.
No one tells me what to do. She is putting her life on the line in order to save the city. And her risk is even greater than Spider-Man's because Spider-Man has powers.
Yeah.
Gwen is the ordinary person.
Yeah.
And this is what I talked about in the Why We Love Superhero episode, why I feel tired of the genre. But this movie shows how an ordinary, common person can make a difference. And it is Gwen being there that saves the day because without her, Spider-Man would have been cooked by Electro.
He would have. Yeah.
It's about the classic Spider-Man thing, great power and great responsibility. That's on all of us. Gwen embodies that in this movie just as much as Peter does. And it's like, I'm like this entrepreneur. People look at me, oh, you're doing all these amazing things. But my wife, no one sees the things that she does, but she literally helps people. She saved lives. She's even more of a hero than I am. And that's just such a beautiful thing of how we enact that mantra, great power, great responsibility, but just in different ways, When she says, I got to go to England, Peter, that might as well be Tori saying, I've got to go to Florida, Derrick. Because a lot of the fights that I mentioned earlier were centered on that. Like, do you really have to be doing this in Florida and why? And I don't want to go. I even said several times that we might be on different paths, but now obviously I'm here. Tori is my path. And no matter where it takes us, I mean, it's amazing. It brought us here, literally to this table right now. If I had not followed Tori to Florida, none of this would have happened. She is the hero, and not just on a mass scale, but she's the hero for Peter too. Mm-hmm. Because when they stand on the bridge, the same bridge that he saved the boy in the first movie, and that's the first time that he said, I'm Spider-Man, right? That bridge, he takes off the mask, and his identity is reflected in the fact that it is not Spider-Man, but it is Peter Parker. He might be Spider-Man in his being, but Peter Parker is saying, I am choosing this.
Yeah.
I am choosing you over everything else.
Yeah. That's
And
good.
and that's what Harry said in the elevator to Gwen is like, that's why he needs you to help make his choices clear.
Mm-hmm.
Family has made my choices clear. That's why I quit the job that I was at and knew I needed a different rhythm in life. Family makes your choices clear. And that's the tragedy of this movie. Gwen says, you're Spider-Man and I love that, but I love Peter Parker more. He chooses Peter Parker, but Spider-Man has to deal with the antagonist, kind of like Batman Returns, right? He has to deal with these elements that he is in a way responsible for. And the thing is he doesn't deal with either one of them well. One of them he blows up, and the other one he tries to physically overpower.
Yeah.
And it's not Harry that kills Gwen. Harry puts Gwen in a situation that gets her killed, but Gwen gets killed and Spider-Man could not save her.
Yeah.
In time.
In time, exactly.
Yeah.
Literally on a clock tower, which is super on the nose.
Yeah.
But still, thematically, it works. And if this was any other comic book movie, like if this was an MCU movie, Spider-Man would have saved Peter. They would have been quipping jokes.
This is
while
nothing like an MCU.
Fighting the Harry.
Yeah.
And the thing is that fight with Harry and Spider-Man, right before that fight happens, do you know what Harry says once he realizes that Peter and Spider-Man are the same? He says, when Spider-Man said no, you said no. That is an attack on his both identities simultaneously. Because Peter has been trying to live two lives and he can't.
Yeah.
When the vow that he made on the bridge, like a marriage vow to be there with Gwen, is proof that his two identities are now one. And Harry knows that and is calling him out on that.
Mm-hmm.
And that reconciling of his identities.
It's Batman Returns.
It is Batman Returns. 100%.
Yeah.
It's the same movie.
That's
and just as
wild.
Catwoman dies in Batman Returns, kind of in a way, right?
Yeah.
Penguin, the villain, gets taken out like Electro, and Peter Parker is left alone
Yeah.
in the brutalest death scene. Yeah. That's the thing is Peter and Gwen are such a good couple. This is why I like them more than Toby and Kirsten is because I don't think Toby and Kirsten are a realistic depiction of a couple. I don't think it's healthy. I think marriage is a lot like what they are. They're partners. They bring different things to the table and they use those things together. The tragedy. Oh yeah. And the other line that Harry says that I forgot is he says, you don't give people hope, you take it away. And so when Gwen dies, the clock tower goes to 121, which that's the issue, the comic book issue that she dies in. I know it's really what?
No, it's funny. It's just on the nose. The time,
it's the clock
clock
tower.
number. The number's funny though.
Everything. But man, if this happened to Tori, I'd be ruined. My worst fears are losing Tori, but also not being able to help the people that I care about in my life. And that's literally like this whole movie here is like my fears. And I remember you texted me, Nick, this was probably like a year ago or so. You looked at a letterbox list of like my favorite movies. And we were talking about failure because we were talking about Inside Llewyn Davis and we were kind of going at it for a while on the text. And you were like, are there any movies in your life that you love that actually have to do with failure?
None of your characters fail.
And I was like,
they all overcome. They're all heroes.
And I was like, well, Luke in Empire. And you're like, yeah, but in Return of the Jedi, he's right back. But this movie, I can add this to the list.
Yeah.
This is failure on all levels. And these are like my worst failures coming to light in a movie. So when that happens, he stays at the grave and that's the moment of silence.
Yeah.
That's the moment that Peter finally sits.
And it passes through time.
He passes through, he's stuck in time.
Yeah.
And that montage there, that's the most mature moment of the movie, I think. And he's stuck in time. Okay. So here's the crazy thing. All throughout this story, we've seen Spider-Man inspiring hope. But now we get towards the end here. And as Peter is stuck in time, the seasons pass, he can't move on. Aunt May even asks him that question, like, where are you going? Not physically, but like, where are you going in life? Because Peter now is the one who is in need of rescuing. And so the film is bookended by Gwen's speeches. So in the beginning, Peter misses the speech because he's too busy being Spider-Man. At the end of the movie, Peter is listening to the speech by not being Spider-Man. And calling from beyond the grave, Gwen's graduation speech reminds Peter of what he's forgotten, of the whole reason why he's doing this, and it's to become hope. That's what Gwen wished for him and for any of us out there, but Peter has buried it with her because he's lost sight of that hope. But if he takes her words and makes them true for him, then Gwen doesn't really die. Gwen will live on through him by the way that he embodies those words. I love that line where he says he will become greater than what we suffer. And even if we fail, which he has, what better way is there to live? And this is the final thing that made me want to do this movie. When we went on our first retreat together, I went walking on the beach and I was praying and just having some time of solitude, which is interesting.
Yeah.
And do you know what God gave me, brought to mind? This line, as we were talking about if we wanted to commit to doing this podcast together.
Yeah.
And this is going to lead into my stats here. And even if we fail, what better way is there to live?
That's good.
And I think I told you guys that when we got back to the house. I said, guys, I think I got something. And we sat there and we talked about this podcast. And here we are.
Yeah.
We've done it, right?
Yeah.
We're here.
We'll get right back to the podcast in just a moment. But first, this podcast is dedicated to unlocking the power of storytelling for your life. And if you've ever wondered what that looks like for you, then I've got something exciting to share. I had the opportunity to write a chapter for the just released book, The Unleashed Entrepreneur. It's a collection of stories, wisdom, and insights from entrepreneurs all over the country. And in my chapter, I share the power of storytelling and what that's meant for my life. And as people read my story, my hope is that they will begin to think of their lives as a story and what the power of storytelling looks like for them and how they want to communicate their story and live their story in the most meaningful way possible. And so if that sounds interesting to you, then check out the link in the bio. The book is available on Amazon. It's available on Barnes & Noble. You can get the ebook version. You can get a paperback version. And additionally, if you want to immerse yourself more in the world of storytelling, then check out allthingsnarrative.com. Sign up for our email list to get 5 tips for improving your storytelling. And we will stay in touch and let you know about upcoming events, workshops, coaching, and other things that we've got going on that you might be interested in. So check out allthingsnarrative.com. Check out The Unleashed Entrepreneur with the chapter on the power of storytelling. And without further ado, let's get back to the conversation. No surprise that this is what I think the common thread in all my movies is identity. All of my movies are about characters having an identity crisis, which is wild because I feel like that represents so many different moments in my life. When you look at my movies, there's a very interesting journey that's here. So, and also just want to preface that The Godfather and Fight Club are not on mine or anyone else's list because those were technically requests. So they were ones that had been suggested to us by numerous people. And so Fight Club does work interesting with my themes, but they are crime movies. I don't have any crime movies on my list, but they are all crime movies, crime thrillers in a way. So I do think that's interesting.
Harmonica.
The first one that was picked was Once Upon a Time in the West when we did the Western episode.
Yeah.
That's my only Western, and that is basically a story about the identity of what the West was and what the West is going to be. Is the West Harmonica, Cheyenne, and what's his name, the black hat guy again?
What's his name?
That makes
Phone
sense.
book. What's his name?
Frank.
Frank, thank you.
You're on
Frank
such a
Phone book.
macro. You're on such
Uh-huh.
a macro level here.
Yes,
Yeah.
and we're
Yeah.
starting with the macro versus
Yeah.
what the West could be with the woman, right?
Yeah.
And the railroad and all that stuff. Then we get to Sweeney Todd and we get to horror.
Mhm.
And again, is he
Who is he?
Benjamin
Yep.
or is he Sweeney Todd,
Yeah.
right? And feel free to jump in on this, guys, as well, because I want you guys
I
to
want to
see these
this.
connections too. This is an emo musical.
Mhm.
Okay. This is a critically acclaimed, one of the greatest films of all time.
Uh-huh.
And then for our Why We Love Superheroes episode,
It was.
I choose
Mhm.
Spider-Verse,
Yeah.
which is again, Spider-Man,
Ooh, yep.
identities. It's
Mhm.
all there,
Black and
right?
red.
These were my first 3 picks.
Yeah.
And they are also my last 3 picks.
Okay.
And I'll tell you in a moment why. You'll
What
see
you
it
mean,
in a
yeah.
moment. These are my first 3 and my last 3. My
Emo the musical.
Sweeney Todd is Emo the
Yeah.
musical.
Yeah.
So origin story, Star Wars is oh, and by the way, Western and horror are like my 2 least favorite genres. So it's interesting that
That
is where
still
what
connects,
started for
yeah.
me too. And Spider-Man superhero, that was like my favorite genre for the longest time.
Yeah.
Star Wars comes in, and Star Wars is like the foundation. It's fantasy. Actually, I need to do all 4 of these. I need to do
Guts.
these together. So Star Wars, Dune, Planet of the Apes,
Yep.
Pinocchio.
Pinocchio.
When we rebranded to be Live a Meaningful Story podcast, the first films I picked were fantasy and science fiction.
Mm.
No
That's good.
realism
Yeah.
at all. Fantasy, science fiction. But it was necessary. Star Wars Foundation, particularly Return of the Jedi. Is Luke gonna go to the dark side? You notice that's what I leaned in on, right? The tension between the light and the dark. Can someone on the dark side be redeemed? Darth Vader.
Yeah.
Dune, the archetypes, Paul Atreides. Who is the real Paul Atreides? Identity right there. Multiple identities. All the names, right? That he's competing against. Planet of the Apes, macro. What is man? Is there anything in the universe better than man?
Yeah.
The identities, right, of apes, man, that's all there. And then Pinocchio represents the culmination of this part of the podcast here. Because, like, now I relate to Luke Skywalker and Paul Atreides. I think they're characters that you can see me in for sure.
You can relate to Paul.
But yes, definitely. But Pinocchio, Paul Atreides is who I would become, like a dark side of me, is a shadow. But Pinocchio represented a shift in the podcast. Pinocchio is a deeply personal film. Deeply, I mean, we did this around the time Benjamin was born. It brought out so many things about what it means to be a father to a son.
Yeah.
I can't even begin. So this is a key moment here, Pinocchio. This is a culmination of this kind of fantasy sci-fi thing, right? And in Pinocchio, it's really interesting because the character that I really connect with is actually the cricket, because he aspires to be this great storyteller, but then he gets caught up in a story that's bigger than himself. And, you know, we talked about on the episode how Pinocchio is kind of like this Christ-like figure in a way. And so that's like a awesome metaphor for like my relationship with God, and Tree of Life really ties in to that as well. Both of those are not just about parenting, but they're also to me about what it means to have a relationship with our Heavenly Father. And then we get Logan and RoboCop. And I put these 2 versions because they're the same movie, but inverted. They're hard R movies of me trying to prove that I don't just like fantasy, sci-fi, that kind of stuff. I like intense, real movies as well.
Real movies.
And Logan is a movie. It's about someone who is coming down from the mythic, re-embracing the human, and has to find the mythic again, right? It's literally named the human, Logan, that identity. But he has to become the Wolverine to save the day.
Yeah.
RoboCop is the opposite. It's Murphy, the human, who has to become the mythic RoboCop, but then RoboCop has to find his humanity again, find Murphy.
Yeah.
And they're literally the freaking same cover.
Yes.
Very cool.
Fair, with just the title in the middle, the human and the myth.
Yeah.
Yep, right there.
Yeah.
Pretty cool.
That's dope.
Then we get to Inglourious Basterds.
Then we get to the Bastards.
Which is where I start moving into realism, even though it's highly, highly fictionalized realism, but it's a step in that direction.
Straight
Just by the way, genre-wise, so Logan, superhero, RoboCop, you know,
borderline superhero,
superhero, borderline science fiction, even a little bit of satire there as well. Inglourious Basterds, war. War is my first entry into realism, which I find interesting.
Yeah, okay.
Very in light of our conversation, Nick. And then we get Mr. Smith Goes to Washington and Tree of Life. We're in full-blown realism now. We are in slice of life dramas here. I am trying to prove something to Nick, but also to myself when I bring these movies out. Like Nick's comment in
he's doing a good job.
Nick's comment in the RoboCop episode about you only would like this stuff if it's got a man in a robot suit. That comment hurt so bad.
What did I say?
That's funny.
That comment hurt so bad. I'm like, screw it. That you said at the end of the RoboCop episode, you looked at me after an hour plus conversation. How do you personally connect with this movie? He's like, I'd love to hear it because it seems like you only connect to this guy because he's in a robot suit.
That's crazy.
That is
Nick,
crazy.
you came for it. You came for
Hey, I did my job.
it.
I did my job.
So then,
That's true.
So then we move into just pure drama here, right? And there's parts of me coming out in this. I think Tree of Life is the second time.
Hey, that
With
comment
Pinocchio being the first?
led to a 27,000 view.
That's true.
That is
video.
the highest viewed promo.
And
Is the
that
RoboCop
comment
one.
directly led to that.
100%.
So
I don't regret it at all.
fuck y'all.
But anyways, this is huge here,
Nick's
right?
got so much of it today.
Right? It's the last
We
one.
all did, dude.
Fuck it.
Then I go back to fantasy. I bring anime in because I realize it's a piece of me that
Yeah.
is not there with Studio Ghibli and Princess Mononoke.
Mhm.
But also, I really think Ashitaka is one of my top 5 most relatable protagonists. When you sent out the text to Joe and Jason, Ashitaka was mentioned in
Yeah.
that. So I stand by that for an I Am the Protagonist
That's a
pick.
brand name. I stand.
Yes, I stand by that. Network is back to realism, but something different with Network. Because Network is satire. One of the things I discovered on this podcast is that I love satire. Love satire. And I knew Network needed to be in here as one of my picks. Because here's the thing, where do you go after this? We said on the podcast this might be the greatest movie we've picked on the podcast. So where on earth do we go after picking Network? We go to freaking Emo the Musical.
Mhm.
We go to the most schlockiest of all my picks from this to Emo the Musical. But Emo the Musical, despite being a musical, and it's also a satire, so I think that flows out of Network as well.
It's poetic that Emo and Networks should stand side by side.
They do.
on your
They
network,
do stand by
on
side.
your show.
100%.
That is poetic.
It is poetic. Yes. They go together. But Emo the Musical, like Network is very little me, very little personal connection to me. Emo is all me. I felt naked. Joseph said I felt seen watching it, right? And then after Emo and the conversations I had with you guys, that's why I was like, we need to come here. We need to go back to the superhero. We need to go back to something, a character that has been the most meaningful connection character I've had in fiction. And we need to address this. We need to address the Amazing Spider-Man 2, making the fan, all that stuff needs to come out. You've got a story where Peter Parker is being torn between like the myth, the superhero, that world kind of pulling him where he's getting his sense of identity, and the more grounded, realistic, slice of life drama world of his romance with Gwen. And so his whole identity crisis is like on a grand scale. It even mimics just this crisis I have between the different films that I've picked. And again, this is why my first 3 picks were my last 3 picks. I picked Once Upon a Time in the West, critically acclaimed film. Network, critically acclaimed, big macro films, no personal connection.
That's crazy.
Then I go to Sweeney Todd and Emo the Musical, which are freaking emo musicals.
Yeah.
But we're moving closer to that connection.
Yeah.
And then we
That's
end with
crazy.
Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Insane, right?
Yeah. That's sick.
Any thoughts on that before I finish my
Parallel
stats?
lines. No, that's sick.
That's the podcast version of the Inglourious Bastards video.
Crazy, right?
It's awesome.
Decades. My oldest film is 1939, Mr. Smith. My latest film is
Beat me.
2024, Dune.
1 second.
Dune Part 2, specifically. Decades. I was ashamed to admit this, but my most popular decade is the 2010s.
Yes. I was going to say the 2000s.
5
actually.
movies, 2 Spider-Man films, Tree of Life, Logan, and Emo the Musical.
Logan.
5 films from the 2010s, but whatever. I don't care.
You're waiting for me to die.
Whatever. Keep it moving. Whatever.
Letterbox themes. These were the common letterbox themes that I had. So the number 1 was The Journey. This was the number 1. So I picked.
Yeah, you always on a journey.
I picked 7 films that fall into this category: Star Wars, Dune, Planet of the Apes, Logan, Pinocchio, Tree of Life, Princess Mononoke.
Okay.
All films where there's some sort of journey, either a physical journey or a psychological journey that have to take place. Yep, we're doing this. The next closest one was heroism.
Okay.
So hero's journey. So journey and heroism. Go freaking figure, right? Hero's journey. So heroism was Star Wars, Dune, Logan, RoboCop, Princess Mononoke, and Spider-Man.
Okay.
I had 3 movies about confronting power, which was interesting. aka The System, which
Mhm.
was RoboCop,
That's right.
Mr. Smith, and Network.
Okay.
3 films about that.
It's because they have the strings.
There's no more strings.
Yeah.
On
I mean, you could
Yeah.
honestly put Pinocchio in that category
Yeah.
too, with challenging Mussolini and all that.
Yeah.
You can put that in there. And speaking of Pinocchio, I chose 3 musicals.
Okay.
Pinocchio, Emo, and Sweeney.
Yeah.
Pinocchio's a musical?
Technically it
songs,
is.
yeah.
Yes. Technically it's a musical. So with all that being said, I was trying to figure out what is the common theme in all my movies. What is that thing that pulls it all together? So I feel like a lot of my journey on this podcast has been a journey towards authenticity. And now here's the thing. I stand by this. Every single one of my podcast picks, I have something in it that I connect to personally, right?
I agree.
But we had a conversation, Nick, and to be fair, I started it. I reached out to you and I said, I'm struggling to see, there's something I'm missing in my movies.
And the main point, it was your words. They weren't my words either.
Yes.
So you started it and ended it.
Yes.
And then didn't want to admit it.
Nope. But it's true. I started it and I reached out to you and I said, man, there's something I'm not seeing, right? I could see your all's movies so dang well. But for me, and this is true for all of us, sometimes we need someone else, right? So one of the things that you said in that text exchange, that was probably one of the hardest things
Damn.
I've heard in a long time, was when you texted, I think you hide behind the narrative.
Well, I think I said more specifically, I think you get lost.
You said lost in the narrative.
myth. I think
Yeah,
lost in the myth
Uh-huh.
or lost in the story.
Yes. I remember I was standing outside in the backyard when you texted that, looking at that text,
Mm-hmm.
being like, ooh, that kind of hurts.
Well, I prefaced this one by saying you're not going to like it. I said,
yeah, you did say that. You did say that.
I said, I have a theory, but you're not going to like this one. And you said, lay it on me confidently.
Yes.
So I did.
I showed you, so I had like a top 4 there, right, at the time. And it was like Pinocchio, Tree of Life, Logan, and Network.
Yeah.
And then you were looking at that, you were looking at my movies, and you were like, bro, where are you?
Yeah, specifically with Logan, I couldn't see you in that one. And then Network, I could kind of see you, but still not as like a main character.
Right.
Could I see you?
Yeah, and I feel like I'm more in the ideas.
Yeah.
I think that's what's so different about us, right?
Yeah.
It's like, for me, like, character is theme, and it's hard to separate those from me with the story.
It came out so clearly in Once Upon a Time in the West. When you said the West, who is the West and what is the West becoming?
Yeah.
That is like, you're identifying with the West on
such
the
a big
macro
macro
level. Like, that's crazy. That's really cool. But
Yeah.
it can get hard to connect with when we're taking characters and you don't have a character.
Yeah. Yes.
Necessarily.
Yes.
And
And I agree with that now. Because I do pick these really big macro films. And I think it's crazy that the last 2 films I picked for this podcast, Emo and Spider-Man, I think they're the most micro of my picks. They are the most
absolutely.
micro. And here's the other thing that's interesting. Yes, they're satires. Yes, they're superhero stories. But they are also, and this is the only time this genre comes in, they're also romances. And I think one of the things that I realized in our conversation, I don't think I said it in our conversation, but I realized when I reflected on it, the lover archetype is so big for me. And I completely suppressed that in almost all of my picks.
That's interesting. So when you said that, the first thought was, if they're romances, they're intimate,
Mm-hmm.
and you have to be intimate. And that...
Yes. Yes. Crazy, right?
Yeah.
And then, yeah, I really think the lover, I identify with that archetype very well. And the lover archetype is about intimacy and about gauging intimacy with people. And it is so ironic that that's the one that I hid away. So ironic. Aunt May says in the movie, like, everyone has a part of themselves we hide, even from the ones we love the most. I love you guys so stinking much. I have no clue why I was hiding that.
But, okay, so this may not get in or not, but
yeah,
you're doing this with us at the table, but you're also doing this with thousands of listeners. It's not just us.
Yes.
So that in that space, I could see potential to, I wouldn't use the word hide, but I could see potential to suppress that.
Yes. Oof. It's true, though. I am always thinking about other people. Like
Mhm.
Spider-Man, I'm thinking about saving the crowd. I'm thinking about what's out there, the nameless faces
Mhm.
who I don't even know are going to listen to this. So,
Dang. Yeah.
yeah, it's heavy, man. And not to mention also in that text exchange, I think you started to see I was really losing it when I was like, "Who am I like?" And you were like, "Hans Landa." And I was like, and who'd you say? Who else did you say right there?
Penguin.
You said Penguin. And I'm like, is there anyone else other than an effing Nazi and like a demon bird?
Wait, no, yeah.
What did I say?
I didn't use you. You said the Nazi part, and there was someone else. It wasn't Penguin.
Yeah.
Oh, but that was funny. But I think with my picks, I can find the pieces where I failed most easily.
Mm-hmm.
And so I can see villains and I can see characters that are like Llewyn Davis is not a great character, but I can see those
Yeah.
sides of me. And so when I look at other people, or when I can see, I didn't see a Nazi when I said Londa, but I can see somebody that can play both sides if they chose, if they wanted to, someone that was intelligent enough.
I think Paul Atreides and Hans Landa are definitely representations of like the darker sides of what I'm capable of.
And then I still stand by Penguin.
Well, I do identify with Batman Returns pretty hard. I might.
If you went totally off the rails.
Well, Penguin would
to be fair,
Penguin is the struggle to belong.
Mm-hmm. And he can also play both sides.
And he was
playing the city, and he had a game in his back pocket. So that's just a generalization, but I see myself in generalizations too.
Yeah.
So,
for sure.
I was like, boom. But those are intimate because those are negative parts of us.
Yeah. Well, and I feel like when I look back on the journey now, I feel like Pinocchio is like the Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio. That's like the first time that I'm really starting to come out. It's a big story, but it's also an intimate story. Jason asked me a great question. You asked me a great question, Jason, about being vulnerable, about being a father, right? And you drew some of that out of me towards the end of that episode. But Pinocchio was really like, I feel like I was really starting to come out there. Tree of Life, I felt like I came out in another way as well. But I feel like with Emo and Spider-Man, I'm naked and I'm all out. And it's accepting. Those are two films I did not even have on my mind to pick for this podcast. Most of these films I knew I was going to pick at some point. But those ones, I think it's really interesting that those are the ones that I kind of end on here.
And you were going to pick Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, which is an amazing, brilliant
amazing
movie.
And there is an intimacy there, but it's not my intimacy.
And it was going to be more in the idea.
Yeah. What would you guys, I don't know if I want to ask this because you guys might already know.
Good.
What do you guys see as like the common thread?
That you are reluctant to go on this hero's journey that has been put before you. You are the reluctant hero of your story.
I don't think so.
That's crazy because that's Frodo, but never mind.
I don't think so because I don't think these characters are. I don't think Luke is reluctant. I don't think Peter Parker's reluctant. Paul Atreides is not reluctant. I don't think these characters are. They want to be there.
So then, is it too much power, too much wanting, too much to be seen?
Is it just too much?
Family and
just
work,
too much.
Family and mission, or family and calling.
Okay, Jason's getting closer to it. He's starting to get to it.
He's starting to get it, Jason.
Family
Keep going.
And ambition, because I think of Sweeney Todd, where there's the like holding on to the like the innocence of his lost wife, or just going on this crusade. Peter Parker it's a Gwen or mission. It's Gwen or the crowds.
Jason's getting it. He's getting to it.
And that's the speed of life. Nature versus what was the other one? And
Grace. Nature versus Grace. See, Jason.
Grace.
Oh, he's like right on it.
Keep going, Jason.
Oh, Nature and Grace is the perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's the same with Network with the guy that's like, I want to go back to my wife instead of mingled with TV. Luke, his family, or going out into his adventure.
And then later, Luke, light versus the dark side.
Calling versus family, calling versus feel like I'm circling around.
No, you're getting. I'm gonna pull you to the finish line because you're about to get there.
I'm about to walk out like Max in the end of the movie.
Yeah,
you're welcome, guys.
Yeah.
So here's what it is. All right. In the end of the Amazing Spider-Man 1, the teacher says some people say there's 10 basic plots in all fiction, but there's only one, and that's my theme. Who am I? Who am I versus who I am becoming.
Okay.
It's the warring within your identity.
Okay, yeah.
That's everything, right? Princess Mononoke, it's the Iron Town versus the Forest Spirits, right? Network, you mentioned. Spider-Man, you mentioned. Tree of Life, you mentioned. Mr. Smith, it's am I going to be a senator and see this through to the end, or am I going to go home and give up?
Yeah.
Inglourious Bastards, that's obvious. That's the Nazis versus the Allies. Logan and RoboCop, again, it's the identities between the myth and the human. Pinocchio, it's the son. It's Geppetto looking at Carlo versus Pinocchio. That scene of I don't want to be like Carlo.
Yeah.
That's where it comes in that movie, right?
Yeah.
Dune I mentioned, Star Wars I mentioned, Planet of the Apes I mentioned. Oh, and you've got Emo the musical also, which has the obvious emo Christian dichotomy there. But even just the struggle to be authentic, to be your authentic self versus trying to fit in with the crowd. So the individual versus the group, whatever you want to call it. So you see that that's the thing that I see in all my movies. There's also a weird thing where every single one of my movies, death is very important to a character's journey in all 16, which I find fascinating.
Yeah.
So what is your favorite film that I've picked for the podcast?
Favorite film?
Favorite film, yes.
I would say, looking at it, would be...
Dang, that's really hard for me.
I think Mr. Smith.
Really?
Yeah, I think Mr. Smith.
Interesting.
Either Mr. Smith or Pinocchio.
Out of nowhere.
Interesting.
Yeah. Pinocchio, because always father and son movies hit me, and then it's a stop motion movie.
Yeah.
But I think there's just such a purity to the Mr. Smith movie that that's kind of a purity that's lost. Or
that's like Nick's least favorite.
Really?
Yeah, probably. But Joe's picking all the ones not in his filmography. That's his favorites for ours.
Yeah, that's cool. He's picking what he's missing.
Yes,
that's sick.
Yes, he is.
So yeah, I would say that. I would say those two.
Jason, what about you?
Once Upon a Time in the West, for sure.
That's interesting too.
Sweeney Todd is like close.
That's interesting because those are the two I feel most distant from.
Really?
That's interesting. Yeah.
Those two I feel closest to.
That's wild.
Yeah.
What about you, Nick?
This is like our favorite, not the one we would own or
no,
the favorite episodes.
just your favorite. What do you think is the best movie that I picked?
Best movie?
Yeah.
I think it's Network.
Yeah.
I think it's Network.
Now, what about the movie that you don't own that you most would want to own?
Once Upon a Time in the West.
Sweeney Todd.
Oh, it was almost Sweeney Todd. I forgot it was on the list. But I think it's... So I'll go... Sweeney Todd is 2. 4K UHD. Number 1, VHS. Return of the Jedi. I think I gotta have it, and then I gotta have The Last Jedi, because I think those two side by side is the two sides of Star Wars.
I agree.
I would have the VHS of Planet of the Apes.
Ooh, that would be a cool one.
That's a good one.
That's a good one.
Almost dead.
Now, what is your favorite episode of any of my picks? Favorite conversation we had around these movies?
Mr. Smith.
Really?
Yeah.
See, I think that's one of my least favorites.
Mr. Smith and Pinocchio, I would say again.
Pinocchio is in my top.
Yeah.
It's Bastards. That was the... Kyle was there. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah, that was.
That movie is just endlessly quotable.
Yeah.
And also, that was the biggest turn out of all the films for me, because I'm not a fan of Bastards anymore.
Oh.
Yeah, that's off my list.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
That was a turn like away from.
Yeah, that was... I owned it.
And he gave it to me.
That's crazy. No, I owned another version too. I sold it. But that's one that I let go of.
Jason.
But that was a really cool conversation.
So Bastards, Pinocchio, maybe Mr. Smith. What was your favorite conversation?
For me, it's also Mr. Smith.
Wow.
Mr. Smith.
This is interesting.
I was so disconnected at first, and then selfishly it did become very personal. I was like, oh, okay.
I want to sit and think about these reactions more.
And just the the thought around how do we confront injustice and stand strong, and like the support that really sees us through, because he couldn't have done it without Ole Miss.
Yeah.
So I really like that. And like I kind of saw a bit of myself in that. So I related to you in that movie.
Yeah. So I'll reveal in a second what my favorite conversations were, because they're also my top 4. So old top 4, my top favorite movies, I would have said probably Truman Show, Spider-Verse, Star Wars movies. Like that's kind of what I would have said for my old top 4. But my new top 4, which I'll reveal dramatically here. So these are not just the 4 movies that I think are my favorite movies. They are also the 4 movies that I most see myself in. And I think they are my favorite conversations that I've had on the podcast with you guys.
Okay.
So the first one.
Is Logan.
Nope.
No.
See, I thought it was going to be Logan, but the more I've thought about it, the more it's not.
Okay.
But Logan is still one of my favorite films. The first one at the top is Pinocchio.
Okay.
Number 1.
Pinocchio, I think it's my favorite film all time. It's probably also my favorite conversation. I just felt like the whole retreat, those episodes were so good. And watching that with you guys was really special.
It's a beautiful movie.
That is the representation of like what I want to create with this play I'm doing for Pilgrim's Progress of adaptation.
Okay.
It has inspired me so much in the power of storytelling. My second one, my number 2, would be Tree of Life.
Okay.
Tree of Life relating so heavy to Brad Pitt and the dad, the search for meaning, the story of God, right? Finding God in there. And those are both like objectively really good movies, masterpieces. Then the other 2 are not. The third one would be Emo the Musical.
Okay.
Just deeply personal. I had a lot of fun. That was my most fun episode, I think. I had even more than the Bastards one. I think the Emo was just so much fun. Having Tori on there was nice too.
Yeah.
And with Emo, the musical, you've got the struggle to belong, which is another key theme for my films. And then the last one would be my fan edit of The Amazing Spider-Man 2. And then with The Amazing Spider-Man 2, it's hope on the horizon, the type of endings I've talked about. Not in all my films, but in a lot of them. So yeah, when I look at my top 4, it really is these genres. So it's fantasy like with Pinocchio, it's slice of life dramas like Tree of Life, it's satires like Emo the Musical, and it's superheroes like The Amazing Spider-Man 2, which is ironic because that's a genre I was trying to run away from a couple years ago, but now I've accepted that it does play a very important role in my story. And it's cool when I look at this top 4 because I see 2 of these films where I really see me and Tori with Emo and Spider-Man, and then in Tree of Life and Pinocchio, I really see parenting and what does it mean to be a father in them. So I feel like my family is represented here as well, which is cool. And now here's the crazy thing about that top 4 that I realized was that this top 4 would not have happened if it were not for each one of you.
Really?
Because each one of you contributed in a way to this. So let me tell you how, okay? Pinocchio represents my gift from Jason.
Really?
I'll tell you why. Childlike wonder infused into a story about liberation as the means towards becoming a whole person. That's the story of Pinocchio. That's where I connect with you and your films. It's animated. It's fun, like all that stuff. It is home cooked.
Fun.
It is home cooked cinema made with care.
And there's some disturbing bits about it.
Yeah.
Yes, which you got some of that in you too.
You definitely got some of that.
I take hard left turns.
Tree of Life represents my gift from Nick. It's an attention towards realism, and it's a celebration of finding beauty in the everyday. It's auteur, fine dining, echo meal.
Echo sharing.
At its greatest, deep, theologically rich, deep, right? It's all the things I think about with Nick represented in a film. Even if it's not your favorite film, but
ironic.
I think I wouldn't have picked it had it not, though, been for, right? It's a gift you've really given me.
And I gave you that DVD.
And you gave me this. So literally, yes. Emo, the musical, represents my gift from Joe. It's an embrace of schlock, fun,
bad movies,
and the feeling of joy in being fully seen. Because every single one of your films are fun, but you're also clearly there. It's like fast food cinema. It's like eating a Carl's Jr. Western Bacon Cheeseburger
double Western Bacon
together,
cheeseburger.
right?
It's a double Western Bacon cheeseburger, baby.
And the Amazing Spider-Man 2, And The Amazing Spider-Man 2 represents my gift to myself. It's the ability with me to be accepting fully who I am, but also creating a better version of what I could become by literally making a fan edit of a better version of that movie.
Yeah, oh, it's too perfect. It's so perfect. Like, there's no way you could have ever planned or directed this.
Yeah.
No, it's
no
not.
way.
And then in my office, in my home office, I have 4 things on the wall. I have a Narnia poster, which represents fantasy. I've got a Spider-Man poster. I've got a Bible Project poster with the Tree of Life literally on the thing.
Yeah.
And I've got all the ticket stubs from all the concerts I've been to.
Funny.
Emo the Musical. It literally, I've been surrounded by this the whole time.
Yeah.
And I can't thank you guys enough for the part that you've played and you will continue to play in my life. And I love you guys so much because you have all helped me to live a meaningful story.
No, I love you too. And right around the comment where you said that I hurt your feelings, I fully realized how much we're dead without each other.
Yeah.
Like, because from that video doesn't happen. The movies that we've picked going forward doesn't happen. Spider-Man 2 doesn't happen. And I'm just amazed that, like Max, I came back and I'm just dead on my own.
Yeah.
And it's just awesome. So I'm not necessarily like, I don't think happy is the word. It's just so much peace.
We're content.
So much peace.
Yeah.
There's a contentment there. But all in all, guys, I mean, I've been in such a hurry. I'm always in a hurry. Life is moving fast. Time is always moving. I mean, there was this time where, talk about being late for something. We were recording the Logan episode here. And I don't know if you guys remember, but that was the day of our baby shower for Ben. And you guys came out to there. And it was all the way in Loxahatchee. And we fell behind schedule because the After Sun episode was really heavy. And we took a moment to breathe and talk through that. And I don't regret that at all. But I was late for my own baby shower. And the look that my wife gave me when I got in there late, oh my goodness, guys.
That's so cool.
Yeah. And it was ironic because the Logan episode was talking about parenting. And I was late to my own baby shower. Oh, this movie hurts. It feels so much. But I guess what I'm trying to say is I'm excited that we now have a season where we can just be. We don't have to do anything. We don't have any obligation. It doesn't have to be a part of work and all things narrative. Because all things narrative, I feel like I'm always spinning all these plates. I feel like I've got all these contractors, all these partners, all these different things that I'm trying to satisfy. And if all things narrative wins, sometimes family loses. And that's a hard thing as an entrepreneur. But I'm looking, and even church is technically work for me, because I'm on staff there. So it could feel like I'm working almost every day of the week. And even being with you guys recording the podcast, it's still on my calendar as work. Editing this podcast is still work hours that I use for that. So I'm looking forward to going on this retreat and having a friendship with you guys where it's not connected to urban youth. It's not connected to all things narrative. It's just us being. And I think that's the journey that I've had to learn, is just to be present and not to feel like I have to do. I'll end with this. The last line of Gwen's speech says, I know it feels like we're saying goodbye, but we will carry a piece of each other into everything that we do next. And I feel like I'm literally carrying pieces of you guys with me, with these movies, and with all the things that I've shared here. Now, here's the crazy thing. This is where I end the fan edit. And I made this like a year ago. But this is the final line of my fan edit, which is the final movie pick of all my picks for the podcast. This is what and you can't make this up. The final line is Peter staring at the Spider-Man mask on his bed as the words to remind us of who we are and who we're meant to be. And that's my entire podcast journey right there. I'm done.
God has written way better stories than we ever could.
Seriously.
It's
all glory
at
to
every
him.
step of the way.
Yeah. Is there any final things you want to share before we wrap this podcast to a close?
Oh, proud of you, Derrick.
Yeah.
This you did a lot of work, and I'm not easy to be friends with sometimes.
We need each other. We are so different.
Super
we need
proud
each
of you.
other. Yeah. No, thank you guys.
You have done an amazing job, Derrick, and utilizing and trusting God to step out on faith of running your own business by doing this, not knowing how it's going to look, but trusting the journey has inspired me as well to do it like what we've been doing.
Praise God for that.
It's been good.
And glory to God for all the connections he's brought out on this podcast. So
someone out there start your own podcast.
Yeah, Nike, seriously.
Start watching movies.
And I think
me like Jason.
And
I was just about to say, Derrick, I didn't care about any of this at all.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I now care about it.
Yeah.
And I have a collection of DVDs.
That's so
that
crazy.
means something to you.
Yeah. Like, and that I want to actually have them.
Yeah.
Like, I want more. And now mine are gonna be sitting right next to Nick's. Shrek is gonna be right next to
Nightmare on Elm Street 4.
Right next to Nightmare on Elm Street.
Yep.
So good.
Yeah, get in touch with your creative side, everybody.
And we're all going on our own journeys. And for me, I've spent 3.5 years talking about other people's stories, talking about my life story. But now I've really feel like it's time for me to start telling my own stories because I'm really inspired by you, Joe, and your stop motions. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to start writing these plays. And now I've got the play I'm working on. And I feel like that's where I want to direct my creative energy to is bringing stories, taking all the things that we've learned from each other and now going out and telling those stories to inspire people. And maybe one day people will be on podcasts talking about it. Who knows?
That'd be great. Yeah.
But this is what I want to end with because there's a verse that I think God has given me this week that I think sums up the whole podcast journey. And it's so perfect, it's unbelievable. Not only does it tie into the theme of the time in The Amazing Spider-Man 2, which we started with the Ecclesiastes 3 with time, but I think it ties into everything here. You guys ready for it?
Yeah.
It's Ecclesiastes 3:11, and literally this verse is on the wall in my home office. The teacher stated, God has made everything beautiful in its time. He has also set eternity in the hearts of men. Yet we cannot fathom the work that God has done from beginning to end.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's good. Yeah. That is perfect.
The word you were looking for
is amen.
Oh, that's not the word. It's amen.
Amen. Amen.
I love you guys. Thank you to everyone out there who's listened, who's been willing to hear, 75 different conversations we've had about stories, about us exploring the connections between the stories we love and live. And I hope and pray that wherever you are at, that you are living a meaningful story. Thank you, and God bless.